Okay, so in this week, let me lay out a little bit of the plan for this week. In this week, we're going to talk about culture. We're going to talk about why there isn't just one uniform culture that encompasses the entire world. You know, if you were to travel from the United States to Canada or across the world to the Asian continent or the African continent, you're going to see very different styles of dress and music and language and religions that are practiced that really make us stand out to those groups of people. Heck, if you were even travel to various parts of the United States, you're going to see different religions practiced. You're going to see different styles of homes, how homes are built and how they're constructed, how they're laid out, how people dress, how people talk, the music they listen to. Even the United States itself, with its various ethnicities, you know, the melting pot of the United States itself is a vast group of cultures. So we're going to talk about what makes up culture, why culture is different. We're going to transfer that into folk versus popular culture. And then tomorrow, guys, going into Wednesday, we're going to talk about the main types of religions that are found throughout the world, some of the important characteristics of religion. And then we'll go into when different cultures butt heads, what happens? So then we'll get into some cultural conflicts that either have taken place in the past and right now, that are occurring right now. We're not going to look at all cultural conflicts. We just don't have the time for that. But I'm going to highlight some that you should know about that have occurred recently or are occurring right now. So by the time Thursday rolls around, you guys should have a better grasp of what makes up our culture, a better appreciation of some other cultures in the world, how it spreads, cultural conflicts, and you should have a better understanding of some of the major religions in the world. Okay, so that is the goal for this week. Any questions before we move on? And again, if you have questions during this time, feel free just to turn your mic on and interrupt me because in the chat, I can't see it until I pop out of the presentation mode. All right, here we go. Again, we're covering slides 1 through 16 today. So here's the section header. We're in folk versus popular culture. And these are some important terms you should know. A couple important terms you should know right off the bat. You should know what a hearth is, and you should know what diffusion is. So when we talk about what makes up a hearth is a starting point, a point where something begins. Okay, and I give some examples there. The starting point for the Islamic religion. Islam is a major religion that Muslims follow. Islam was founded in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Okay, so that's the founding point. And because of that, Mecca, a very populated city in Saudi Arabia, is considered a very prominent and important place in the Islamic faith. If you're looking at rap music, I can show you right here. If you look at the geography of hip-hop music, now rap music doesn't have a specific starting point because let's face it, there's different types of hip hop or rap music. You have rap music that really originated in the East Coast, and with the East Coast rap, it was considered to be originating from the slums and poverty-stricken neighborhoods of New York City, the Bronx, Brooklyn. Those were areas where we have what's known as gangster rap. If you went out to the West Coast, it came from Compton and Inglewood, some of the poverty-stricken neighborhoods of Los Angeles. You know, you got, I think it was Coolio and Dr. Dre. I think if you go over here, if this was North, West Coast, East Coast, South, if you look out here you got Snoop Dogg, you got Ice Cube, you got Dr. Dre, who all originated from the Los Angeles neighborhoods. If you went out to the East Coast, Jay-Z, New York City, Wu-Tang Clan, New York City. Some of these guys, I don't know. You guys would have to. Notorious B.I.G., I believe he was from New York City. Eminem, where's he at? Michigan, from Detroit. I know Nelly's in there somewhere. I don't see him. But I know Nelly's in there somewhere. Nelly's from St. Louis. So I guess the point I'm trying to make, guys, is that keep in mind that a hearth is a starting point, in that within music or culture, it could have multiple hearths. You know, a lot of people think that the hearth of country music is Nashville, Tennessee, Whereas some people will say that a lot of it started in the backwoods areas of Kentucky and Tennessee and Louisiana. So baseball, the hearth of baseball is considered to be New York City, started around the 1840s and 50s. What else? You know, the starting point for the iPhone would probably be Silicon Valley in California, where Apple is located. So a hearth could be for an idea, the iPhone. It could be for music. It could be for a language. You know, even a language has an origination point. It could be for a style of dress. What would, like, if you think about like the important styles of dress for us, you know, blue jeans and joggers and clothes like that. Where do you guys think that hearth is from? Where do you think the hearth is? Anybody want to take a guess? Where does a lot of our fashion come from? I'll give you a hint. It's a major city.
LA.
Yeah, it's LA, and it's one other major city.
New York.
New York?
Yeah. Yep, New York City. A lot of the big fashion companies are located, have their headquarters on the East Coast and West Coast because of access to markets overseas. So New York City and LA, that's where a lot of your fashions originate from. They come out with their fashion lines there, and if people like them, if it catches on, they make more of them. If it doesn't, they go to something else. So when something spreads, like for example, clothes, if they come out with a new fashion line for clothes and people catch on to it and they like it and they buy it, that spread is known as diffusion. So you should also know what diffusion is. In a little bit, we're going to talk about the main types of diffusion. Here's an example of diffusion right here. In the 1960s, after bluegrass, country, and blues music, some British bands that are listed there began to play a style of music known as rock and roll. And so these British bands who started in Liverpool and London and other cities in England, over time, because of radio, their music became popular in the United States. And all of a sudden, the United States radio stations were getting flooded or inundated with British rock and roll. And so that period in the early 1960s, when all of a sudden Americans were subjected to all this British rock music, was known as the British invasion. So maybe some of you who like some of these bands, maybe you have a little better understanding of where these bands come from. I'm a huge Rolling Stones fan. I love the Rolling Stones. They're my favorite rock and roll group of all time. But you got some other famous groups in here. You got like The Who, you got the Beatles, you got the Kinks. Those are some big names at the time. And the Rolling Stones and the Beatles are considered to be two of the best bands of all time. And they came from England. And the reason their music ever made it to the United States is technology, the radio. We already talked about the geography of hip hop. You're welcome to look at this a little bit more if you find this interesting. Again, this is organized like if this was the entire United States, this would be like Midwest. This would be East Coast. This would be South. You know, Ludacris, I think he's from Atlanta, I want to say. Juvenile. Again, some of these I'm a little behind the times on rap music, but I was a big Snoop Dogg fan when I was younger. Ice Cube, I've heard of. Dr. Dre, I was a big fan of. Not so much anymore, but.
Have you heard of Biggie Smalls or not?
Biggie Smalls? Yeah, I've heard of him. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tupac.
Music? You like him?
Yeah.
Yeah. They made a movie on him, didn't they?
Yeah.
Did you see it?
Nah, there's they make what's it called? Like Netflix shows. Unsolved it's called, I think. And it's like the murder cases of Tupac and Biggie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, you seen it or you haven't seen it?
I've seen it, but I haven't finished it yet.
Okay. How have you liked it?
It's pretty good. It's interesting.
I should check it out. I do want to learn more about that, about like, because I know there's like conspiracy theorists about his death and stuff.
Uh-huh.
I haven't seen that, but I've seen Straight Outta Compton. That's a pretty good movie.
That's a good movie.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I don't always agree with like the message that they're sending, but hey, you can like, in my opinion, you can like music and at the same time disagree with their points of view. And where a lot of those guys came from too. Like I mentioned this before, a lot of these rappers, they grew up in such poverty-stricken neighborhoods that you kind of empathize with them, and you're happy that they've made it. You know, they're never gonna have to worry about money again.
Yeah.
And you know, they worked hard. They created their style of music. You might not agree with the message, but from where they came from, that's actually a pretty cool story. You know, like Eminem, Dr. Dre, I know uh he lived in I don't think he ever met his dad. You know, terrible poverty that he lived in. Eminem, he lived in I think he lived in trailer parks. You know, some
Yeah.
of these guys, you're happy with how they've made it. Cool. Thanks for sharing. All right. So, how does our culture spread? So, I mentioned before that diffusion is the spread of something. So, if you took diffusion, guys, you could break diffusion down into these 4 types. So, you got to know these 4 types right here. These 4 types that are listed in the bullet points, those are the 4 main types of diffusion. And notice that I give a definition for a couple of them, but for others, I'm just going to talk about it. These flies are terrible. All right, so let me start from the top. Here's what contagious diffusion is. Contagious diffusion is something rapid, spreading really quickly. So this could be an idea. It could be a style of music. It could be technology. It's something that just, once it starts from its hearth, it moves very rapidly from place to place. So knowing that contagious is rapid, widespread, can you guys think of any examples, either today or in the past, of contagious diffusion? Any examples? I'll give you a hint. I'll get it started. I make a YouTube video, okay? Let's say I'm a popular YouTuber, which I'm not, but let's say I am. I post that video to YouTube. All of a sudden, it's not just kids in Woodstock watching that video.
A viral video?
What's that?
A viral video?
Yeah, you cut me off, and that's perfect. That's a perfect example of contagious diffusion, because not only are people in Woodstock going to watch it, people in other parts of the world can watch it like that. It spreads rapidly. All right, so knowing that, other examples of contagious diffusion.
Maybe some businesses spreading, like whether it's fast food or technology, just throughout the world.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like when McDonald's comes out with a new product, you know, that product is issued to all their restaurants, and people know about it pretty quickly thanks to their media, their marketing. Good. What else? I'll give you a hint. This is something that once I say it, or once it's brought up, you guys are like, it was right in front of us. What has spread so rapidly throughout the world over the last 4 to 5 months?
Coronavirus?
Yeah, the coronavirus. Yeah. So, guys, it doesn't have to be like a product or music. It could be a disease, too. If you think about COVID-19, the coronavirus, how quickly that spread. If you think about other pandemics in years past, the flu pandemic of 1918, it started in Europe when American soldiers were returning home, and that thing spread like wildfire throughout the United States and parts of Europe. The Black Plague of the 14th century spread like wildfire throughout Europe by movement of peoples, and because it was so rapidly spreading. Yeah, absolutely. Other examples of contagious diffusion you guys can think of.
Clothes designs?
Yeah. Okay. How so?
I guess like trends, you could say.
Okay. Very good. So like when you
Fast
think of, fast food. Okay, so what?
No. Fast fashion.
Oh, fast fashion. Okay, yeah. Okay, so like when you guys think of fashion, and we mentioned music earlier and videos, what spreads those so quickly?
Internet.
Yes. Technology, the internet. Very good. So one thing you should know with contagious diffusion here, guys, is that not only it spreads rapidly, but it spreads rapidly usually, not all the time, but usually because of technology, because of smartphones and computers. Okay. Now COVID is a different story, but for most things, contagious, it spreads because of technology. Hierarchical, the second one. Hierarchical is power. So a good example of this would be like a government that controls the people, forcing all people to speak a language. North Korea. North Korea forces all people to follow and obey their government, and they cannot leave. They have to do what their government says. They believe that their ruler is appointed by the gods. So that's hierarchical diffusion. They're listening to a higher power. In some ways, clothing designs can also be hierarchical diffusion because it comes from people in power in New York City and LA. If you look at this picture here of Taylor Swift, this was a big time Coca-Cola marketing campaign that they did with her. Taylor Swift is a very popular pop music star. And so when they used her, person in power to market Diet Coke, that would be an example of hierarchical diffusion. The spread of Diet Coke and Coca-Cola from somebody in power, Taylor Swift. Can you guys think of other examples of hierarchical diffusion?
Would like a political campaign count as one, like for an election? If
Yeah,
they're trying-
tell me what you mean by that.
like if they're trying to spread the ideology and why you should vote for them, would that
Yes.
count?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's somebody, like Joe Biden, Donald Trump, people that their political constituents look up to. They look for them for advice and for opinions. And so, yeah, absolutely, there'd be hierarchical power. Yep. Others that you guys can think of.
Could your parents be one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially when you're younger. Kids are molded so much by the household that they live in. Politically, culturally, with their customs, the things they believe, their religion. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, very good, guys. Anybody have anything else?
What about like the laws?
Okay, well,
Like,
who sets
being blinded
the
by
laws?
like illegal stuff, like what stuff we can't do?
Sure. So, who sets the laws?
The government.
Yeah, very good. So that would be hierarchical as well because the government, you got to follow laws. It's a trade-off. I mentioned a trade-off last week. We have to follow the laws, and in return, what do we get? Well, the government builds us roads, they build us schools, they provide services to us, police and health, postal services, things like that. It's a trade-off. We get those services, and in return, we have to listen to them. We have to follow their rules. Absolutely, I like it. Relocation diffusion. Now here I give you the definition already. Relocation is the physical movement of people. So people moving from place to place. That's relocation diffusion. So if you think about COVID-19, COVID-19 is not only contagious diffusion, but it's relocation because how is it spread? The most recent studies of how people contract COVID-19, it's not so much from like hard surfaces. It's from people speaking in close contact to one another, people being in a closed environment like indoors with no air circulation. That's how it spreads. So if one person has COVID-19, goes to a concert or I hate to say it, but like a classroom and talks in close contact with somebody, they're probably going to spread COVID-19. So relocation diffusion. If you think about American baseball, I mentioned this last week too. American baseball spread from the United States to Japan right after World War II. That's relocation diffusion. The soldiers from the United States came to Japan. They played it in their free time. And now baseball is like the national pastime of Japan. Stimulus diffusion. Here's an example of stimulus diffusion. Apple makes a smartphone, the iPhone, right? Can you guys think of other examples of smartphones out there besides the iPhone?
Probably only ones overseas, made by like different companies, like in different languages.
Okay, like Huawei. Huawei's
Yeah.
a big one in China. Okay. Are there other smartphones that we use here besides the iPhone?
Android.
Yeah, absolutely. The Android and smartphones overseas that are modified, That's an example of stimulus diffusion. Stimulus diffusion is when you take something and you modify it. So like when country music started out, you guys think like the country music that you hear today, like Luke Bryan and Maren Morris, do you think that sounds exactly like the country music of like 50, 60 years ago? Do you think Luke Bryan sounds exactly like, say, like a Johnny Cash? Probably not, right? That's
Because
stimulus diffusion.
the world
That-
has been, as some people say, overtaken by pop, and
yeah,
the country is starting to like take the pop into it, and so like people like Luke Bryan, sometimes some of their songs sound more like a pop song than a country song.
absolutely. Yeah, like pop country. So that's an example of stimulus diffusion. You're taking a music genre and kind of modifying it to suit new demands and new groups of people with new tastes. It could be sports. You know, sports have been adapted over time. I give an example right here in the bottom right corner, McDonald's. If you were to travel overseas to Paris or Moscow or Beijing and go to a McDonald's, the menu you look at there is going to be a lot different than a McDonald's menu you would find here. It's adapted to fit the cultural tastes of people living over there. So again, stimulus diffusion is something that gets adapted, something that gets a little bit, that gets changed around a little bit. Okay. So in so far, you should know what a herb is. You should know what diffusion is, and you should know the four types of diffusion. Okay. All right. So you know what a habit, a custom, and a taboo is. So a habit is a repetitive act of an individual. Custom is when a group of people perform the same act over and over again. So we'll talk about this in a second. A taboo, don't do it. Don't do that. It's something that is a restriction. It's something that is condemned. It's something that is prohibited within a society. So I give some examples of taboos there. You know, some are pretty obvious, but hey, they're taboos. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to marry more than one person at a time. You're not supposed to have multiple wives or multiple husbands. You're not supposed to cheat on one another. If I were to, let's say, Dominic, Addison, and Emmerich, let's say you guys are working in a business. You guys are in an elevator, right? The first thing you do when you go into an elevator, if there's other people you don't know, do you guys stand right next to one another, or do you kind of spread out?
Spread out.
Yeah, you spread out. So like, what if I were to walk in? Well, I walk into that elevator, I press the button, I'm going up to the 4th floor, and I go and stand right next to one of you, like shoulder to shoulder. That would be really awkward, wouldn't it? That's
It depends on if there's room.
What's that?
It depends on if there's room, like if it's tiny elevator.
Right. Yeah, that's true. But let's assume that in this case, it's a spacious elevator and there's room, and I just go and I stand next to you. That's gonna be weird, right? You're gonna be like, "Who's this guy?" Or
Yeah.
if I look at you and I start talking to you and I get right in your face.
Yeah, that's weird.
Nah, bro.
Yeah.
6 feet.
What's that?
6 feet.
Yeah, that's a taboo. It's a restriction on behavior. So, what are
Yeah.
some other examples? Since we're on taboos, what are some other examples of taboos in your society?
Crime, murder.
Perfect. Yeah, crime. Absolutely. You're expected to follow the law. Steal, don't kill, don't cheat. Yeah. What else?
Right now, we have to stay 6 feet apart and stay at our houses.
Yeah, I like it. Very good. Yes. Not only stay 6 feet apart, social distancing, but when you go into a public place, what are you expected to wear?
A face
man.
mask.
I'm a mess.
Yes. See how taboos change too, guys, based off of situations in the world? Absolutely. Back during World War II, it was considered taboo to spread military secrets or to talk about if you had family members serving in the military, it was considered taboo to tell people where they were serving or what they were doing because they thought there were spies in the United States who were going to tell the Germans or the Japanese. It was considered taboo at the time to not support the government You're supposed to fly the flag, buy war bonds. Absolutely. What else? Other taboos.
If you're not handicapped, don't park in a handicapped spot.
Yeah, very good. Very good. What if I just got on right now and I just started dropping a bunch of F-bombs and I started being derogatory and calling you guys out and used crude language?
That'd be fun.
It would be funny, right? It would be funny, true, especially for you guys because I'm the one doing it and I would probably get fired, but not really a good idea. Teachers, people that are supposed to teach and educate, and people like professionals, you're not supposed to talk like that, especially to younger people. That's a taboo. So any questions on taboo so far? Any other ideas? Any other examples? All right, let's talk about customs. So these are some examples of customs. This isn't something that just one person does. This is something that when you're in our society, you're expected to do these things. You're expected to push your chair in after you've done it with lunch or dinner. You say thank you. You're supposed to show respect to elderly people. You're supposed to take your hat off inside a building. Now, some of these are a little outdated. For example, the hat. A bunch of students at North, I remember a couple years ago, were very resistant to that. It's a custom that's more of a traditional, older custom of an older generation, and they're like, I want to wear hats inside the building. So we changed that rule around a little bit at North, and we allowed them to wear some hats during class and things like that. What are some examples of other customs, like expectations for you guys?
Be respectful.
Okay, so be respectful to all people or just certain groups of people?
Like to everybody, like respect others' property, respect teachers, friends, peers.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Okay. Now, remember, keep in mind that customs could also be representative of certain ethnic groups too. So I'll give you an example of that with myself. I come from an Irish background. I'm Irish and German. And so in March, on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, I always eat corned beef and cabbage. That's an Irish custom. It's a traditional Irish food. And we celebrate, wear green, Irish music, things like that. So that's also an example of a custom. So other examples that you guys can think of.
Christmas.
Yeah, very good. Which is representative of a big American culture, but it's more of a Christian culture that's taken off with a lot of people. What else?
Could it be like if you have like a tradition in your family, or could that be one?
Yeah, could you give me an example?
Well, we do Thanksgiving at my great aunt's every year. Could it be like something like that?
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Others. It doesn't have to be American culture. It could be a culture of a certain ethnic group. Hispanics, Spanish, German, Irish, Italian.
I guess a custom in Spain is that
You're cutting out. Say that again.
the 2 o'clock meal, the whole family.
Okay, you kind of cut out, but it sounds like you have meals at certain times. Is that what you said? You're kind of cutting out there, but I think it's Ellen, but it sounds like you're cutting out, Ellen, but it sounds like you were talking about having meals at certain times. Yes? All right, that's what I'm assuming you're saying, but yeah, that would be a good example. So guys, those are all examples of customs. So some become so popular. Go ahead. Does anybody else have anything they want to add or no? All right, so some of these customs become so popular, like the 4th of July, American music, rock and roll, baseball, football, basketball, that they grow larger and larger until now, like take basketball, for example. Basketball started out as an American sport, and now basketball is not only played in the United States, but it's very popular in China. It's very popular in some other Asian countries in Europe. It's very popular in Europe. So that's an example of a custom, something that a group of people play or participate in that becomes so large that it becomes popular. So right here, here's some examples of American pop culture. You see some TV shows there in The Simpsons and American Idol. You see some examples of, the barber pole, baseball, Western style boots, Barack Obama, who is seen as a very, as an American icon, especially to the Democratic Party. You see these different American organizations from NBC to Playboy to CBS to Nike and Apple. Here's some examples of American culture and how sometimes, here's a cartoon, you see American culture can sometimes be considered invasive to other groups of people, either groups of people living here or groups of people living in other parts of the world. So you got Texaco, you got Coca-Cola, you got Mickey Mouse, you have McDonald's and Microsoft TVs kind of spreading to other parts of the world. There's some other great examples of what's considered American cultural imperialism. This idea that American culture spreads rapidly to the rest of the world and is almost forced upon other groups of people thanks to modern technology and our beliefs. Okay. But sometimes you have people who stick to their own versions of cultures, from the Inuit people, Native American peoples in the United States and Canada, to the Basque people who live in Spain. They live in more of the mountainous regions of Spain. These are groups of people who tend to stick to their own faiths and customs. You can see that the Inuit people who are on the left here, they have a very localized style of dress that's reflective of their environment. They're not wearing joggers. They don't wear traditional American styles of dress. They stick to their own. They're obviously not flying the Spanish flag, the Basque people here. They're flying their own version of their flag. They dress different. They live in the mountainous regions. Here's a great example of people you'd find right here in the United States and in the Midwest, the Amish people. So when you guys look at the Amish people right here, this is where mainly the Amish are located. Parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Indiana. You'll find some too in Illinois and Wisconsin. But when you look at the Amish people, what makes them, in terms of their style of dress, different than the style of dress that we wear?
Much more old-fashioned.
It's very
Yeah.
1700s.
What makes?
Yeah, it's like very much pioneer type of style, I would think.
Yeah. Would you say the colors are very like drab? There's not a lot of colors that pop out to you.
They're very centered around modesty and like covering up.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, the women wear very long dresses. They cover their hair. They have shirts that go down to their wrists. The men wear these wool clothes, pants. They don't wear any shorts. They wear long sleeves. They wear hats. The men grow beards in most part to demonstrate their faith. That's why a lot of Amish men wear beards, to demonstrate their faith. So the Amish are a great example of what's considered, this is the last slide for today, a folk culture. A folk culture is a culture that's more regionalized, meaning found in one particular region or a part of one region. So I just gave you a few examples from the Amish to the Inuit, Basque people. And I bring them up because you're only going to find the Amish in small parts of the Midwest. You're only going to find the Basque people in mountainous regions of Spain. You're only going to find the Inuit people in remote parts of Canada. So those groups keep their culture because they're located usually far away of modern society. And how do they pass their beliefs down? They don't do it through smartphones or websites or blogs. They do it through word of mouth. They tell stories to their younger generations. They tell their younger generations about how they live, how to practice their customs. And so because of that, they pass their styles down through their heritage. And a lot of times they have resistance to outsiders to popular culture, because why would like the Amish never want to change? Why would the Amish be resistant to American culture today? Anybody want to take a guess?
Because of technology and probably future like violence that we've had because of everything since then.
Yeah, if you were an Amish, if you were the head of an Amish society and you were worried about your people being exposed to American music and American dress and our customs, would you worry that some of your people would leave and go live in what you consider the outside world?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So because of that, because they're worried about losing followers, and let's face it, you lose followers over time, your beliefs are going to die out. You're not going to have any more followers to practice your customs. So because of that, these societies tend to be a very closed society. They're very restrictive. They don't allow outsiders in because of those reasons. So this slide here, guys, essentially highlights the difference between what is considered folk culture and popular culture. Folk, much more regionalized, very resistant to outsiders, and they don't use a lot of technology, whereas popular is the exact opposite. Okay. This is slide 17, so we'll get to that tomorrow. All right. So to recap, make sure you know what a hearth is, the 4 types of diffusion: contagious, hierarchical, relocation, and stimulus. Make sure you can tell me what a custom is versus a habit and a taboo. And you can come up with some examples of customs and taboos. And make sure you can tell me the difference between folk and popular culture. So does anybody have any questions on any of the things I just brought up? All right, well, hearing none, what I'd like you guys to do is go to the discussions page. If you click on discussions on the main page there, and right here it says folk versus popular culture discussion board, Monday, July 13th. And what I'd like you guys to do right now is to pick a folk culture that's out there. And I give some examples right here. If you want to look up your own, you can. And what I'd like you guys to do is I'd like you guys to do a little research. Feel free to Google it. That's fine. And in the discussion board, all you do is you just click reply right down there. I'd like you guys to write a 4 to 5 sentence description of the folk culture that you picked. Whether it's the Amish, it's Little Bavaria, it's the Kurds, the Celtic peoples, Basque. There's a whole bunch of Native American tribes out there, from the Cherokee to the Comanche to the Apache, you can learn about. So these are some things that you should write about. What are their customs? You know, what makes up their culture? Where are they located? How do they get around? All right, hang on, bud. Step 2, think of the characteristics of American pop culture that can be found around the Woodstock-McHenry County area. List your example, and in two sentences, explain why it's an example of American pop culture. Okay? And then in the final step, kind of give a prompt here. It says the United States has long been considered a melting pot of ethnic groups. So you got the Irish, the Czech, Germans, Hispanics, with various beliefs, customs, sports, languages, music, etc. Why is it important to have more than one type of culture in your community? Meaning, like, you're going to find various types of cultures right here in Woodstock or Chicago. Why is that important? You know, why is it important we have more than one? So post your response to these 3 things below, and then respond to one of your classmates. feel free to contribute more than once. So what I mean by respond to one of your classmates, you know, if you agree with them in step 3, if you disagree, talk about that. If you found something interesting about a culture that somebody posted in step 1, write about that. Okay? So that is your job for the next 2 hours. And then when we come back in our groups, I'm going to have you guys talk about what you learned about your folk culture. In the event that you finished your discussion board and you feel pretty confident about the things we talked about this morning, you can click on folk versus popular culture quiz. It's 9 questions and you can take that. Okay? Any questions I can answer?